All right, happy Memorial Day, guys. We are very lucky to not only have to celebrate more Memorial Day and remember all of our veterans, the Gold Star families. But we've got a special guest, a veteran here of MACV-SOG, joining us. Without further ado, I'm ready to get into it just as much as y'all are. We've got Mr. John Blaauw. Mr. John, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, I was in Special Forces back in the late 60s, early 70s. I actually went into the service in September of 67, and went to basic training in Fort Knox, which is normal for, I live up in Michigan. And then after that, I went down to Fort McClellan, Alabama for infantry training. And after infantry training, I went to Fort Benning for jump school. And when I was at jump school, they had some guys there from Special Forces, and they were conducting their tests for Special Forces. And I was one of the guys that in the jump school class that qualified to actually take the test. And I thought for me, the test was a lot different than most tests you take. It was more on aptitude and things like what you would do in situations like this and that, not so much about A, B, or C or an essay or something like that. So it was interesting. And then I think maybe a day or two after we took the test, they come out and they had the list of the guys that had passed the test. And I had passed, and then you're asked whether you want to go on to Fort Bragg for Special Forces training, or do you want to go straight to Vietnam? And I two of my friends that went through basic training and AIT with me. We were both all three of us were from Michigan. They both one of them didn't qualify, but the other one did. And they both elected to go on, and both were assigned to the 101st Airborne. And they were after their initial 30-day leave, they were shipped off to Vietnam. And I was on a and after we graduated from jump school, I was on a bus and we took like I can't remember exactly how far it was, but from Benning to Fort Bragg, we took our bus to Fort Bragg, and once we got to Fort Bragg, then we were assigned to our barracks, and we they were brand new buildings. I remember that, and then I don't know if it started right away, if we had a little break, but then we started our special forces training. And training, the first part of the training was basically just your basic special forces training, where you had your uh, land navigations and things like that. And and then at the end of I think it was like 8 to 9 weeks. At the end of that, we had our big FTX, which was, I guess you would call, nowadays I would call it grueling, but back then I was only 21 years old. Well, actually, I was only 20, and it wasn't that stressful for me. But the thing that I remembered about the most was, I think basically we were all up for the whole 7 days, but very little sleep, and it was that I think that was one of the main things that was hardest on everybody. But then and then the last thing is of the test, where we had to land navigate at night for I can't remember exactly how far it was, but took us all night. We didn't get to our location till the next day, early in the morning, and then basically after that, they shipped us. We went back to Fort Bragg, and then we were assigned our MOSs. And when I and before when we weren't doing our MOS training, we were doing basically Army stuff. Shaking out parachutes, picking up trash. Just the same old Army stuff. And then when I was assigned my MOS, I was lucky enough to get assigned to weapons, which I really enjoyed. And then you get both your light, like your machine gun, all your foreign weapons like your AKs, your Swedish Ks, your Sten guns, all that kind of stuff. And then and like special forces, we had an FTX after that also. And then that was kind of interesting because that one, we went to an old firing range, and we basically shot up all the weapons we learned about and talked about, and we got to learn the feel of them, how fast they fired. Like the Thompson submachine gun, if if you were watching, you could actually see the bullet go out the bullet, follow all the way to the target, which I thought was kind of funny. It had a big bullet, but it was real slow. And then again after that, then you have every phase you have to graduate, so they move you on. And some people didn't make it, but usually instead of just having them be out of special forces, they just ran them back through again. I had a couple of buddies of mine that both of them had to go back through. One of them went back through and come through again, and the other one he finally got out, and he wound up over in 101st over in Vietnam also. But then after we graduated from that, the weapons class, then our next phase was the final phase, and that's when you did all your other special forces things like your counterinsurgency, things like that. And then, of course, there was another FTX where you combined all the groups from all the other MOSs, plus you had older NCOs that were put in charge of it was like a 12-man, basically an A-team. And we went on, it was another 6 or 7 to 8, another FTX, and it was the same thing. And then finally, after all that was done, again, there was a graduation, and then we were supposedly officially Special Forces. And I was assigned to the 6th Special Forces, which is right there at Bragg. And we went to, after we got to the 6th, I think I got into the 6th probably in October of 68. And then in December of 68, the whole group went up to Alaska for ski training, which was, it was a lot of fun. Myself being from Michigan, the snow and stuff didn't bother me, but we had guys from Puerto Rico, Florida. They'd never seen snow before. And I never laughed so hard in my life because the guys are going down the hill, and you ever see where the skier grabs a hold of a tree? We had that happen quite a few times. But anyway, then of course they had FTX up there also, and they pulled us behind APCs, and we kind of towed behind them with our skis. And then of course we had to spend the night. I think we spent 2 nights or 3 nights out in the woods, and it was like, I think it averaged around at least 40 below. And the first night was in a tent, which was heated by a kerosene heater, and that was cold. But the next night we built lean-tos facing each other, and we put there was a big fire between and that was just like toast. That was really warm then. And that was the first and only time that I jumped out of a helicopter. Because when the 6th went up to Alaska, they held me back on the plane to unload. So I didn't jump with the rest of the group. But then after, I think it was like a week, everybody that stayed in the planes to help unload had to get on. We went for a jump and went on a helicopter, which was interesting because when I jumped out the door, I could see the skid. I turned my left shoulder and I kind of fell upside down, and my foot got between the risers. And I was still coming down all right, but I was going completely away from everybody else. So they sent an APC to pick me up. And I do remember, I don't know if they still do it now, but when we were in jump school, when we hit the ground, we had to fall down. I hit the ground in Alaska, and it was so soft that I stood there. Might have been only a couple of seconds, but then I realized I'm standing up. So I fell down. And then he come and got me. And then when we were done with that training, then we took off. We went back to Bragg, and we jumped going back to Bragg. And I did jump then. And then that was Christmas time. So I headed home. I think I was home for a week or two. But anyway, I got back to Bragg, and I'll be darned, they had me on orders for Vietnam, but they also had me on orders for Panama for jungle school. So I think it was like the first or second week of January, I went down to Panama with probably half a dozen other special forces people, and we headed down to Panama for jungle school. And the reason they used Panama was because it's basically on the same parallel as Vietnam, and the climate and everything was pretty much the same. And at the time, I didn't know one way or the other, but it was very humid, very wet. And when I got to Vietnam, it was pretty much very humid and very wet. But it was a good experience for me, and it was kind of funny because when I was down there, they put you in 4-man teams, and the 3 guys I were all in. There were 2 second lieutenants and an E6, and they were all in artillery, and I was the only one in special forces. And it was kind of interesting because they had a hard time with land navigation. And I thought, well, you guys are in artillery, you should be able to do a compass and stuff pretty well. But that didn't happen. But anyway, how they broke it down at the jungle school was you were in a 4-man group and you all got points for what school and stuff like that. But they also graded you individually. So luckily for me, the other 3 guys didn't make it through, but I got my jungle expert badge, which really didn't mean anything, but it was, they sent me down there. I didn't really want to come home without one.
Absolutely.
But, yeah. And then once I got back from jungle school, I was on orders for Nam. So I don't know if anybody ever showed you that packet they give you to go overseas. It's about that, I don't know, about that thick. And you have to go around to all these places at Fort Bragg and get them to sign off on it and stuff like that. And of course, you had to get all your shots. So then they sent me, I went home in March, and then I was supposed to report on April 5th, 1969. And I went to I had to fly to Fort Lewis. When I got to the airport, I called the airplane line. I couldn't get a flight on the 5th. So I come in on the 6th. And one of my buddies that I was in Special Forces with, he said, you know what, you're late. You're going to get in a lot of trouble. And I said, what are they going to do? Send me to Vietnam? And that was my, when I first got, I was headed for Vietnam then. And of course you get all your fatigues and all that stuff, and they get you ready to go. And I kind of funny, they get you up like it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and they tell you, you have to, and then we probably stood on the tarmac for a couple hours, which made no sense. But anyway, we got on the tarmac, and we were all standing around this poor young guy. He's probably, I'm guessing he might have been 18 at the most. 27 kept giving him a hard time. And it was dark. Nobody could see me, so I told him to leave him the F alone. And then, like I say, when we flew to Vietnam, I think we went to Alaska, Japan, and I think was Guam, and then we flew into Vietnam. But I think probably everybody you talk to, first thing I noticed when I got off the plane, it was the heat. I mean, because it would just hit you as soon as you walked out the door. And then when I got to when we got into Cam Bay, they took us all to like a staging area, and all the guys that were there, because it was just everybody was on the plane. Didn't matter what your MOS is, who you were, and the guys that were staying there that were like going like to the first cab or something like that. They stayed there for I thought they said 2 weeks to kind of get them oriented to the heat and stuff. Wow. But when I was there was one other guy, and they flew a chopper down from the train and picked us up that day. And wow. Then we flew up to the train, and then when I got to the train, they told me that I was going to SOG, which I didn't even know what that was. But anyway, I had to go to SOG. You had to have a top secret clearance, which I didn't know about at the time. But anyway, my dad was born in the Netherlands, so I had to call home from the train because they wanted my dad's naturalization number, which I didn't have any idea what it was. So they hooked us up with ham radio operators. They called from Vietnam to I don't know if they got all the way to the States or not, but they kind of leapfrogged back to Michigan, and I got a hold of my folks, and my dad wound up. I could have had him tell me over the phone, but I didn't think about it. So I said him send me a letter. So I was there an extra week, which was okay. But and then after that week, myself and another guy, they sent us up to Khartoum, which is CCC. And when we got to at the base, we went into the recon office, and actually it was Sergeant Howard was in charge.
Oh.
And it was kind of funny because the other guy that was with us, and I'm sorry, I just can't remember his name, he assigned him to recon right away. And myself, I'm really quite, I'm short now, but I was short and skinny then. And I didn't think about the time, but he probably thought I wasn't big enough. But anyway, so he sent me to security company, which I don't know if you know what FOB2 was. There's a road that ran, the main road to Blaauw ran right down the middle. So I went over to the security company over there, and the other guy was sent into recon. And so I thought, well, and before I left the room, I said to Sergeant Howard, now, if you need me and you want me to come back, just come and get me. So 2 weeks later, he come over and said, do you still want to run recon? And for some reason, I said yes. And anyway, he took me over at the time. R2 New York was already in the bush, so he took me to a room for their team room, and I brought all my stuff in there, and he assigned me to go out on a mission with Art. And I think I put down in my book Vermont, but I'm almost positive it was New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I went out on a mission with those guys, and that was my first actual combat mission. And those guys were really good. The one guy, the 1-0, and again, I cannot remember the name. He was a lifer, and he was actually in South America when the Special Forces helped him capture Che Guevara.
Oh, I know. Is it Melton? I know exactly who you're talking about, and I'm blanking on it. I'll think of it. But
that was so cool because he told us that the American Special Forces helped him capture him, but they left everything else to the Bolivians. They didn't do anything. They just kind of backed away and let them whatever they were going to do, they were going to do. And that, but I thought, well, that's really cool because he that probably wasn't even his first tour in Vietnam, but he was really, really good, really laid back, not, didn't push you for anything or nothing. And it was very interesting. But the one night when we were in RON, we were across from a ravine, and we saw two probably juvenile tigers. And I couldn't believe how beautiful they looked, because it was just getting towards twilight, towards dark, and their colors were just jump out at you. And I thought, well, that's nice. And then I thought, oh, crap, they're right over there. And then that night we had monkeys jump on us in the middle of the night. I grabbed a handful of hair and threw it off. But I mean, see, that was my first experience with Recon. And then when I got back to the FOB, I met because I knew Ed in at Fort Bragg, and we remembered each other, and he's the one that gave me the nickname. But
Wilkins, would you care to elaborate on that? That's a good nickname too.
I don't know where he got it from, but that's the first thing he said to him when he saw me in country. And it kind of stuck. But yeah, him and John were just back, and I was basically just back too. So then the next mission we went on, we actually went on one in country. We went on one off of Firebase up on the Laotian border. And there was two teams, our team and one of the teams from I think they were from CCS, but they went west and we went east. And just a little while after they left, they ran into contact, and one of the team members was shot. And actually, I ran into him a few years later at one of the reunions, and he was telling me about. He said it was just kind of like in slow motion. He crossed the trail, and he saw the NVA looking at him, and he looked at him, and the next thing you know, he was shot. But yeah. But like I say, and we reconned the other way, and we went down. It was basically pretty much uneventful. The only one of the weirdest thing we got, we weren't very far from Dak To, and we were going through the jungle, just walking, and all of a sudden a Huey gunship went over. We didn't think anything of it, but then probably some VC started shooting at it. So the chopper made a turn, and we thought, shit, you know, they don't know we're here. We didn't have any way to communicate with that chopper, but for some reason he just flew over, and I don't remember shooting back at him again, and he left. And then we had to cross the river to get back to Dock Till. That did not go well. I almost drowned, but I went end over him, but I was carrying a radio, and the next thing I knew I was walking on the bottom of the river. But the good thing about it was, before we stepped out into the water, one of my mountain guards said to me, "Unhook your pistol belt." I would have never thought of that. So I unhooked my pistol belt. If I wouldn't have done it, that would have held me down. But when I got to the bottom, I flipped everything off, the radio, everything, and I went popping up the top, and there was a rock, and I grabbed onto it. Otherwise, I don't know what happened. St. Martin wasn't real happy with me because I'd lost the radio, but he'd lost because he'd lost the radio the mission before. But anyway, we made it, and we got out, and that was fine. And then we had the next mission or two weren't real eventful. And then I don't know if probably Ed's talked to you about Tango 7.
He did a little bit, but we didn't. We definitely like to hear your point of view, if you wouldn't mind, of course.
Oh, yeah, sure. We went in, and I think it was 2 to 3 days. We just basically moved around, checking things out, and trying to find out what we could find out. And all of a sudden, we were walking, and we come across this area where there's this log. It was probably 4 to 5 feet tall, and was probably maybe 40, 50 feet long. And John looked over the top of it, and he could see a MVA compound with log buildings and everything. And he called me over, and he says, "Look." And I said, "Well, you're going to have to help me up a little bit." But anyway, I looked over it. Yeah, they were like 30, 40 foot long log structures with a regular pitch roof and everything on it. And I thought, oh, shoot. So we backed off, and Ed and John had a little conversation. John wanted to attack it right away, and Ed talked him into falling back, and so we went back and we called in air, and we called him in, and we put our panel out and stuff, and they dropped the bombs and everything, and then we went back in to assess what had happened. And when we looked back over the log, they'd missed the whole thing, the whole target. And like that, at that time, it's getting close to dark. But anyway, John decided that we were going to attack anyway. And Ed and I talked about this afterward, years afterwards, that we weren't sure what would happen if we'd have got down there, because there was like 400 to 500 MVA down there. But when they decided to attack, they changed our formation. Usually there would be the point man, John, another yard, and then me, and then a couple more yards, and then the tail gunner would at that time would have been Ed. Well, he wasn't a tail gunner, but he was just in front of the tail gunner. But they switched it around and put Ed up with John. So when John went over the wall, Ed told me later on that he had a grenade in each hand. Well, once he went over the log, they opened up on him. Luckily for him, and probably for Ed also, when he fell backwards, both grenades went the other way. And Ed said that he thought he got the guy that threw the grenade, but then we pulled back. We were trying to pull back as far as we could. I had the other part of the team was with me, so after we pulled back a little bit, we pulled back up, and we found Ed and John, and we checked him over, and I could see that he was hurting pretty bad, but I wasn't sure how bad. And I told him, I said, you should probably gonna be all right. But then he lifted up his T-shirt, and you could see where his insides were coming out of his stomach. And so we gave him morphine, and then John was a not super tall, but he was really stout. Luckily, Ed was big enough. We got him dragged. We dragged him as far back in as we could, away from where we'd engaged the enemy, and the yards were helping us move back. And we got back as I told Ed, I'll go see if I can find an LZ, which I kept. Whoop, did I lose you?
Brought a picture of John
Oh,
up.
okay,
I'm sorry.
yeah. We got John back as far as we could, and we still didn't have anything big enough for an LZ. So we had Cubby flying over. So I don't know if you know about that either, but Cubby was flying over, and the Cubby pilot was shooting these rockets, and the Cubby rider was actually leaning out the window with his AK, not with his car, keeping the enemy off our butts. And I remember talking to him when he got back, and he took his shirt down, showed me it burned all down his shirt because the casings that went down his shirt and burned him. But if those guys wouldn't have done that, I don't know if we'd have got out of there. And then, of course, then they dropped strings, and we got John out, and he took, I think it was John and four of the yards. No, 3 yards. But anyway, they got them out, and then I thought, oh shoot, because it's getting dark. But anyhow, we hooked up and we got out. I do remember kicking bamboo out of the way so they wouldn't drop me. But luckily, they got John back, and they missed Doc Toe, and they got him all. I think he went straight to Pleiku. No, we went to the 4th Infantry Division just down the road, and they got him stable because I think they said they had to put 4 pints of blood in him to get him stable. So, and then they took him. Then he took him to Pleiku, and the next morning or later in the morning, Ed and I both went down to Pleiku and check him out, and he was pretty bad, but they figured he recovered because he caught one in the stomach, one in the hip, and one in the ankle. And I heard later on that they'd lost like an inch with one leg, but and he got hepatitis C from the transfusions. But that's the last time Ed and I saw John. I know Ed has talked to him and been with him since that, but I haven't seen him at all. So
now, isn't it correct also? I mean, I may be getting the missions mixed up, but also when y'all were coming in on strings, wasn't Ed drugged down the
runway? Yeah, you're
yeah.
right. He was dragged down the runway because he was lower,
and
yeah, he got dragged down the runway. Yeah, luckily, they got him stopped, and he. But I know his legs were pretty sore by the time we got back.
He actually had I guess I don't know if all of y'all, but he had that his mind with him, and it was primed, I think, and it had grind down, and it lacked just a little bit more until it would have blown y'all up. So
yeah,
that's always been a harrowing in more ways than one story.
We like all the Americans had a claymore right on our chest, and it had the blasting cap on it already, ready to go. I guess back then we never even thought about that, but yeah, that's just where we carried them. And most of us, y'all used to always had a white phosphorus grenade and stuff like that. So it just, I guess, like you say, you got to have a lot of skill too, but a lot of luck plays in a lot of that stuff because you don't know. I know, but like I say, and after John was gone, then we brought in. We had another guy come in, and he didn't last very long. He got in some kind of an accident where he hurt his hand, and so then we got one more guy, and he got hurt when we were in a mortar attack, and so excuse me. after that, Ed and I decided that we were only going to be the two guys in that room because we didn't want the third guy kept winding up someplace where he didn't want to be, and then and I don't know where Ed was, but then I had to take I had to take the bright light in to look for Bill Stubbs, and that was not it. It was different because we took Sergeant Gross with us, and he was really wound up from the day before because of what had happened, and I had to try to keep him calm. And besides that, I had two new guys on my team, but we looked for Bill. We couldn't find anything from him. We got down to the base of the hill where Sergeant Gross had said they were ambushed. We found, I think, either a matchstick or a matchbook, but that's all we could find. And then by that time, dark was coming in, and so we called for a extraction, and the choppers came in, but when we were down at the bottom of the hill, they couldn't find a landing spot. So we were like 500 meters down, and we had a half hour to get the 500 meters back up. And we made it, but when we were leaving, they were setting up on us with machine guns. But we got out of there, and I do remember looking out the door as we were leaving, and I could see the tracers coming up at us. But by that time, when you're on the chopper, you kind of forget about that kind of stuff, and you say, "Oh, we're pretty well safe." But anyway, yeah, that was hairy. It was too bad that we never did find Bill, because the night before he was killed, we were sitting in the NCO club having a drink, and I told him, I says, "Well, you better stay out of trouble because I'm on bright light tomorrow." But anyway, he didn't listen to me. But and then of course we went. One time we were on a mission, and we were right on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. I don't know if Ed said about it, but I went in on top of him. He was already in there. When he got out, I went in. So they thought the team was leaving. They didn't think anybody was coming in, but we were in. And we were. That's when we were up on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and that's when I think it was the second or third night we started hearing trucks. So we got a hold of base, and I let them know that we had vehicles coming down the road, and they asked me how many, and I think that first night there was like 15 or something like that, and so they decide I stayed there. I think for 3 or 4 more days anyway, and every night we heard some kind of traffic. So when we got back, they asked us if we would go back with a bigger team to try to get a truck driver. So we both said we'd go. Bill Sturgis, I forgot. He was the one. But anyway, we went back. Actually, before we went out on the mission, they sent us up to Da Nang to try to train ourselves for a truck ambush. Actually, we trained right out on the beach. So we stayed at a naval base, and what they say about Navy food's true, is very good. And there's always a lot of it. We were surprised, but anyway, I think we were up there for, I think 4 days. And then we come back, and then we inserted. There was 2 groups. There was our group, and there was 5 of us, 4 Americans and 1 ARVN. And then the other group was Major Jack was in charge of, and they were supposed to be the one that was supposed to be able to take the prisoner. And we sat there. We were on side of the road. We were actually in a bomb crater, but anyway, we were waiting, and it was like 11, maybe 11:30. We hadn't heard anything, and I was kind of feeling kind of bad because I'd gave them the intel, And then all of a sudden, the truck started to roll, and I think it was probably maybe 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. Major Jack's email phoned down to us because I had the radio. Phoned down to us. It said they couldn't get close to the road. They wanted us to take the next truck. So I told everybody, and Bill had a claymore set up alongside the bomb crater at about just about tire high. So when the truck came by, and it was perfect. The truck driver went to shift gears, and we shifted down. He blew the tire. We were going to go down to the truck, see if we get the driver, but the airman that was with us, he blew his Claymore, but the Claymore had a gas, a CS gas canister in front of it. So when he blew that canister, we went down the road. The gas hit us. We had to come back up, put our gas masks on. By the time we got down to the truck, the driver was either gone or dead in the jungle. We couldn't find him. So we checked around that for a while, tried to see anything we could do, and then it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. All of a sudden, we heard trucks coming again, and then we heard grenades and rifle fire, and we went back up into the jungle, and we spent the night up in there. But the next morning, they come and got us, and we had a little fire coming in, but it wasn't too bad. So pretty much, that's pretty much, and that's about, that was basically the missions that were the worst, or we had a BDA, excuse me, that was kind of hairy, but that was when Ed went down in the tunnel. That was, that was supposed to have been a B-52 strike, and when we got there were NVA and VC all over the place. But that's basically what my tour was.
I mean, and if I got mistaken, wasn't that the mission you were just talking about? Wasn't that Operation ASHTRAY 1?
Yes.
You were,
yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
and wasn't Mr. Ray Harris, Dan Ster?
Ray Harris, Dan Steele.
Who else was Bill Spurgeon there too?
Yeah, he was with me. He was with me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And, that was quite a group of guys that y'all had on that op.
Sergeant Todd was with us, and I know the other guy too. The other guy was a 1-0, but I can't remember his name. But yeah, it was a very good group. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, that was built off of RT Washington intel that y'all had, So that was put together mostly by your blood, sweat, and tears out there in the field. So that's that's pretty that's a notch in the belt for you, sir. Yeah, and especially you getting to work on your info.
That's why when I was kind of worried when we didn't hear any truck right away, but actually when we did hit the truck, that was like the 75th truck. So there would have been, and after we ambushed the truck and we fell back into the jungle, they pushed that truck out of the road and they kept running again. So didn't really even slow them down. So.
And another interesting one that a tidbit that you were actually there during the April 70 Sapper attack, weren't you?
Oh yeah, I remember that too. I remember excuse me, I can't remember what time of night it was, but I heard explosions, which isn't unusual for there, but it was closer than normal on the base. And I popped up. Of course, your rifle's always right there, and I grabbed my rifle, grabbed my web gear, put my boots on. I was going to tie them. Then I heard another explosion. I said, "Well, I don't need these boots tied." So I ran out into a bunker. I got in the bunker. I was the only one that had a rifle. One of the guys didn't even have any clothes on. But anyway, that was interesting. And then I said, "Well, seeing as how you guys don't have a rifle or anything, I'm going to go check and see what the inside of the compound looks like." So I went back towards the main part of the base, and I ran into, because we just switched base commanders and sergeant majors, and I ran into the new sergeant major, and he said, "What's going on?" I says, "Well, they're kind of blow up the inside of the compound." I said, "You better get out of here." And I just turned around and I left him there because I didn't. I was going back to where back into the bunker, but they did a job, a job on. And I remember the next morning we went, and in the back of the RT team room, there was a B-40 rocket in the back of the building, but it hadn't exploded. Just the fins were sticking out.
Wow.
And they dropped, when they were leaving, they dropped ordnance that they hadn't exploded yet. You could see where they dropped it on their way out. Well, what happened was they were supposed to come in the compound and use the beef rockets and all that stuff, and put in some mines and things. But there was supposed to be a mortar attack also. Well, the mortar attack started before the sappers were out. So it actually kind of saved us, but it did damage to the compound, and it wrecked the main building where the colonel was and all in their communication and everything was. But as far as like our hooch and everything, that didn't even get touched. And now, of course, everybody set up on the wall after the attack, and we didn't know if they're going to try to overrun the base or not. But we sat up there till daybreak, and that was the last we saw. And then, of course, the next morning, they sent a group of Recon team guys out to look for the sappers, and they actually did call in airstrikes when they thought they caught up with them. But they never, as far as I remember, they didn't find any bodies or anything. So, but I was there during that too. Yeah.
That's I mean that's harrowing, and especially after the terrible incident. At least y'all had learned you got to keep base defense tight, especially after up at CCN, in '68, how bad that went.
Yeah.
Oof, oof. I think we've got enough viewers that are want me to get into some questions. So
Okay.
before I anger some folks, I think we'll get to some questions real quick. And actually, before we get into questions, Mr. Dick Gross's son is on the stream today. He's watching, so I thought I'd let you know that he's here. Let's see here. I actually know of one, and I'm trying to find it, but until I find it, I'll go ahead and they're asking about did you have any interactions with any wildlife, monkeys, snakes, anything like that?
Well, I did, like I said, that first mission we saw the tigers. And in that same mission, when we were at RON, we had it was more than one, because one jumped on me and one jumped on one of the other guys, and I don't know if there was more than that, but they jumped. It must have come out of the trees, so they landed right on my chest. I remember grabbing hold of them and throwing them, but I don't know if anybody knows how dark the jungle's at night, but you can't see anything. But yeah, that was big. And like I say, a lot of people asked me if I had any trouble with any snakes, and the only time I saw a snake, one time we were going through the jungle, and I was 1-1, so I was back by the tail gunner, and I looked back behind us and I saw a big snake go across our path. Other than that, I really didn't have any interaction with them.
Thank goodness.
We saw where elephants had been in the jungle, but I never saw it. I never talked to anybody that actually physically saw an elephant. So, yeah.
Both on the tigers and the snakes. Thank goodness they didn't get any closer than just crossing and just y'all looking at each other. Cause
yeah, I know it. And they were, like I say, that was really pretty to see. But they were younger. They might have been 1 or 2 years old. But I didn't know where their mother was. But anyway,
didn't want to find out either.
No, I did not.
This is an interesting one.
No hammock. Is that for me?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. No, we didn't have the room to carry a hammock. Basically, they called it a sleeping bag. It had snaps all the way around except for the top, and it had like a fleece lining in it. And I put that over you, but it didn't keep you dry, but it kept you, kept the rain from splashing down on your face. But no, no, I did when I was down in Panama, down in for jungle school. They sent a hammock down there with me, but that was a pain to put up, and so and to carry too. So yeah, no, we didn't. Nobody I knew used a hammock.
And I mean, and y'all weren't even, capable. Y'all weren't on level ground. I mean, a lot of times weren't. I mean, y'all were straddling trees to it's sometimes too. Weren't
That
you?
that's a well, I that did happen to me one time. We are in on a side of a hill, and I woke up in the morning and nobody was around me. I thought, what the hell? And I'd rolled down the hill at night, and I thought those guys had left me. But anyway, they found me.
Boy, what was that with Ed in New York?
Yes.
Oh Lord, I could only imagine what Ed was thinking, waking up and not seeing you
Right.
around.
Well, but I don't know if anybody ever said it, but when you get ready for RON at night, you get yourself wherever you know where everything's at. You wrap your arm on the sling of the rifle, and so it's right at your side, so you know right where that's at, and everything, because that's the most important thing. And you have your rucksack and your web gear right behind you. So when I rolled down the hill, I think the only thing I had with me was my rifle. But anyway, they found me.
Thank goodness.
Hmm.
What was the experience level of the Indig on the teams that you served on, and how long had they been in SOG, and had they served in different projects before that?
Some of them had served in other units. A lot of we had, I think, 2 to 3 of the guys were like 16, 17. Our interpreter was 22 or 23, about my age. Uh, and their level of training was, some of them were very good, some of them were pretty green yet. Our point man was very good until when John got shot. That really screwed him up a little bit because he wasn't very good at. And when I took him with me when we went to look for Bill, so and
Oh
that
man.
because I remember telling him when we started down the hill to look for Bill, I said, no, I said, if you see anybody, you shoot them. And he looked at me and says, yeah. I said, yeah, you got to do that because we were, there's no other friendlies out there. But and I think when we went on that BDA with Ed went in the tunnel, I think he was too scared. I think after that Ed fired him. But the other yards were, I think the interpreter was probably the oldest guy, and he was like I say, he was like 21, 22. They're all very, very, very young. There were few of the older guys, and I heard later on that actually our interpreter was killed a couple of years later. So, but yeah, it was. But in the interpreter, they made probably, I think it's, if I remember right, $200 to $300 a month,
Oh
which
wow.
which is a lot for them. That's about what we were making also. But and the other yards were making less than that. But I'm not. But it was still more than they could do. But it was still, real dangerous. And they didn't. But see the yards. I don't know if anybody else has said this, but the yards they didn't like the North Vietnamese or the South Vietnamese. So they didn't care one way or the other. But but to us they were very loyal. I mean, they would help us. If they, like I've told people before, if my yard told me something, I did it because otherwise I would be dead more than once because of what they told me, and like even if they were only 16, 17, that wasn't their first rodeo. They'd done it before and they knew, and the yards were the ones that lived in the hills anyway, and they were used to hunting and stuff like that, and to different noises and what was good and what was bad, and I mean, that was just outstanding for us. I don't know why some of the other army, maybe they did, I don't know. We didn't really have any interactions with the other army units as far as what they used for scouts or anything like that. I know they had Kit Carson scouts, but I don't know if they used any of the yards or not. But Anyway,
From speaking, no, it sounded like y'all really had it down pat with the indigenous groups,
yeah,
and I shared something earlier today where one of the teams had a roster sheet and a bit of a history on the current team, and some of the guys, like you said, were very young, but they had already had 3 years experience with CIDG, and then another 6 months with the hatchet forces, or a year, and then would have a year or two on a recon team, all by 17 and 18 years old. So these guys had a lot of experience. They may look childlike, like everyone says, but they definitely knew their way around the
yeah,
bush.
and like I say, they wouldn't bring anybody on the recon team that hadn't had some experience what they were doing. So, and they still had, we had our interpreter. The point man was usually more experienced, and then we had one of the yard users was a grenadier. He had the M79, but everybody had their jobs, and we would train them, and on our missions and stuff like that. And we'd go on, we'd train at that. We had a fire range south towards Pleiku that we train on, and we would take them in for live fire and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a lot better than the 4 months that the regular draftee got that went into the Army. I tell you that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
And
light years.
that was all OJT for those poor guys. And and maybe I might be a little prejudiced, but the regular Army guys, officers, they weren't the sharpest tack in the block.
Mm,
So
mm, no. Sadly, you had a few good ones, but for the most part, like you said, no, no. Um, oh, what was it like to try and talk Mr. John St. Martin down from something, i.e., the mission, trying to get him not to attack?
I laughed that up to Ed, and and we did, but we still attacked anyway. So anyway, yeah, Don was very forward of what he wanted to do, and he knew he wasn't afraid to do anything either. So that was, if you want somebody to back you up from, he would be the guy to do it. But yeah,
He had some prior experience with RT South Carolina as well,
yeah,
before.
yeah. Yeah. Not to mention, I knew he did. I just didn't know who it was with,
Mm,
because when he took over for RT New York, he would actually on that team, and that Sergeant Howard actually gave him charge of New York, because the other 1-0 was having some kind of a physical problem. So he gave him the team right then. So, and that's when they lost that's when they lost the radio.
Here's a
Right up on
picture
the,
of the compound, guys, and there is the road right slap
yeah,
down the middle, like
yep,
Mr. John was speaking of.
yeah,
So the
and
security element definitely had their work cut out for them with a highway running through the compound.
yep.
Um,
If you
let's see.
and if you got
Okay.
yourself in trouble on that in town or anything like that, you just had to get through one of them gates, because nobody else could get in not even the Army, not even MPs. So,
Wow.
but anyway,
Safe haven.
yeah.
Can you talk about a typical night at the club? Maybe any memorable stories?
Uh, there's a few times at the club we had some pretty good times. Christmas time, I remember somebody found a whole case of champagne,
Oh,
and we were sitting around just drinking the champagne and not really doing much. And all of a sudden, somebody took one of the glasses of champagne and threw it at one of the other guys. Of course, then we all started doing it. Then we wandered over to the officers club, and the rest, like they say, is history.
oh, I would love to see footage of that today. My goodness.
Yeah, there wasn't any cameras back then. That was the good
Th-
part.
I was about to say, thank goodness. I think that got answered. He was asking about carrying a poncho or any poncho liners.
No.
But Oh, that's a good one. Can you describe what it was like to see Captain Don Fulton and Howard Davis fighting tooth and nail to ensure the team's safety on that mission?
I actually didn't. I know they were talking to somebody back at base, but we couldn't actually hear it on the ground. But I do know when I got back that those two guys saved our lives. Otherwise, we wouldn't have made it out. Especially when trying to get John out, because he couldn't help because he had, like I say, just the one good leg, and the other one, besides the stomach wound, that was he was just pretty much out of it. And we had to give I think we wound up giving him 2 syringes of the morphine. So yeah, he was pretty much out of it. And luckily, like I say, they missed Doc Toe and got him right back to the hospital at the 4th Division.
Wow. It's a wonder. I mean, especially like you said, with his intestines and everything out. I mean, it's a wonder he made it. And
Well, his T-shirt was actually holding all that stuff in. So that was that. Otherwise, we Ed put one of the big bandages on it, but it wasn't really big enough, and you had to hold it in. But luckily, what happened was once he picked him up with the choppers, we got to like 3,000 feet. It was colder, so that cooled him down and it stopped the blood flow, so it wasn't bleeding out as fast. And like I say, and missing Doc Toe helped too, getting him to a regular hospital. So
wow. I mean, everything had lined up and was working, and for him to survive. I mean,
definitely, yeah, definitely, because otherwise, and if like I say, Don and Davis, they kept them away from us. Every time they try to move in on us, they come back, they make another run, and they keep them away. And then finally, like I say, the last chopper when we got out of there, it was getting dark and it was raining, but we did, like I say, we were kicking bamboo, so we didn't want to get dropped, but we did make it out. And like I say, they did drag it on the runway when we got back. But I do remember when I got back, the chopper landed, and a door gunner asked me if I wanted a cigarette, and I gave it to him, but I couldn't hold on to it. I was shaking.
yeah, that just.
But, I know it, yeah.
Wow. So the cloud coverage and with darkness, you actually didn't get to see Mr. Karate
No.
Davis hanging out.
No, we did not.
Wow.
We didn't know about it till afterwards.
Yeah, Don said when he got back and Howard was getting out, everyone ran over, and it was like you see in movies of trash coming out of someone's car. Just 6 shells were just all over the pavement where he had just gone through, I think, all 20 mags that Don had on him.
I think you're right. Yeah. And like I say, besides all the burns he had on his skin because from the casing. Yeah.
My gosh. I'll be anxious to see your response for this one. Did y'all ever play any crazy pranks on each other back at the base?
I don't remember any, except for the campaign. I'm sure some guys did, but I don't remember any.
Well, I
do have a story. It's not a prank, but it's something that actually I pulled.
Absolutely, share, please.
It happened up at Doc Toe. We were on Bright Light, and the 4th Infantry Division was up there, and they had a base there, and they had a mess tent that was E6 and above. Well, we didn't have any rank or anything on our uniform, and I don't remember whoever it was who was higher up than I was, because I was a buck sergeant. So we went over there to eat, and then we saw that sign, and whoever it was said to me, he says, "Now remember, you got to be E6 or above." So I went in there. He said, "Well, what's your rank?" I said, "Lieutenant." So I went and we ate. Then I went back a month or maybe 2 months later. I was an E6 then, but we went back there to eat again, and the same guy, mess sergeant, was there. And he says, "Hello, Lieutenant." I said, "Hi."
I like that. That's a safe one to pick. Might as well go with the lieutenant. You're young.
Well, they said I looked too young to be a staff sergeant, which it probably was true, except later, within a couple of months, I was. But by that time we were already playing the game. We might as well keep at it.
Absolutely. Got to keep the story straight.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any interesting experiences, any of the yard villages?
Actually, we only went to the yard village once, and that was by accident. And that was when we crossed the river, and we didn't really hang around at all because we'd already been. When the time we walked into the village, we were already compromised, so we really couldn't stick around. But we had, the yards would bring stuff. I don't know how many times we had parties where they brought the rice wine down.
That's the
With
next
the big
question.
jugs with the straw. I don't know if you guys heard anything about that. It's got a little stick about that long, and it's on the straw, and you got to drink down until that stick's empty. Well, the first couple of times it's not too bad, but after that, it takes a little more effort to do it. Yeah.
We've heard, and that was actually the next question. Any stories of excessive rice wine consumption that you can remember to share?
There was a lot of a very excessive wine drunk.
That's
we'd buy a cow or a steer or something from the village too, and we'd throw a party for the yards, and
wow.
and they'd have the rice. Of course, I can't remember how much but it was for back then, in the '60s. We were playing probably what they almost pay for them now for a cow, which we didn't care. We had the money because I don't know anybody say about it before, but we never our salary or whatever you want to call it we got was free and clear. We could send all that money back to the States because all our rations and everything were paid for by the bar that the SCCC ran, and we, so all that money we had, we could send back,
That's good stuff. That's really good. Living the good life. Living the good life.
But we'd wind up with air conditioners and all kinds of stuff. And one time we had one captain that he was a pretty good scrounger. He went back to either Trang or Saigon, I don't remember which, but he came back in a full air conditioning unit for the kitchen for our mess hall. But CID was right behind him, so they took him back. Nothing happened to him, but anyhow.
The famous I wonder if that was Terry Sorsby, the famous scrounger.
Was he a captain?
No. Oh, you said captain. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, he was I believe he was only a sergeant. He may have actually made lieutenant, but
okay.
But he was a famous scrounger at CCC.
Yeah, this guy was a captain. He was, but we were not without stuff. I mean, we had all kinds of vehicles and everything, and we had our own motor pool. And the first thing they did was, I don't know if you used to have just a switch that turned on the vehicles. They put ignitions in all of them because guys like us would steal them otherwise.
I think now that you just reminded me, Captain, I think maybe that could be Captain Neil Cody. He was a famous Covey writer as well, and that might be him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be him. He was very famous for procuring stuff.
Yeah.
This is a very good question. I've always been curious about this. Who in Recon Company did you look up to?
Well, when I first got there, I saw Sergeant Howard, and at the time I didn't even know that he was up for the Medal of Honor because I just got there. But I always looked up to Ed. Ed knew Ed seemed to know what he's doing. He had a pretty level head on him. He didn't try to get you in a situation where he didn't think we could get out of, which I always thought was a good trait. You don't mind taking chances, but you don't want to get to the point where everything has to go according to plan or you won't get out. So I think it would be Ed.
Wow, that's amazing, and I'll wait because that'll end up coming up when some questions die down. I'll tie back into that. How many older men do you remember in Recon? For example, Country Grimes, Walt Shoemate, any of them that were in WW2 besides Frank Jacks or any of the
Frank Jacks was the only one I knew for sure, and I know some of the guys that worked in the motor pool were older They might have been in World War II, but they'd already had like 2 to 3 tours over in Vietnam. So instead of doing the recon or something, like they just took a job in the motor pool just to make sure they got home okay. But
Absolutely.
but yeah, Major Jackson was the only I remember. Oh, you're and Colonel App.
Absolutely. But both of them legendary men.
And like I say, if I had to, Ed was a recon for the one I respected the most. But the best officer I ever had was Major Jack. I mean, it was Colonel App. He was really, I don't know, he didn't really act like a military officer. He really knew what he was doing, and his main promise he wanted to do is make sure everybody got home if they could.
Wow.
And he loved to be on the ground out with the troops, but he wasn't supposed to be. So if we went out there, nobody said anything.
I was just fixing to say both of those men are the only two men I know that ever colonels and higher or anything like that actually went to the field. And much respect for both of them for doing that.
Yeah, and like a Colonel App, like I say, he'd go. They especially not so much with the recon anyway, but with the platoons, he would go in, especially and he just liked being on the ground, and then they'd come in and get him and take him back out. But you didn't have to worry about him if he was on the ground, that you had to watch out for him or put extra security on him. He was just one of the soldiers out there, and he just and with his knowledge, that was probably a good thing to have. Especially some of those platoons got in some really bad stuff.
Mr. Terry Cadenback he's CCC Hatchet Forces, and he says Lieutenant Colonel App was the best commander I ever knew as well.
I'll vote for that 100%. Yeah, I don't remember the who took over for him when he left, but all I do remember that somebody was talking about the guy who took over for him was I really spit and polish kind of guy, you know what I mean? And but funny, I heard later on that actually Colonel Lapp got to be full bird before for this guy, or I don't know if the other guy ever made it or not. But I was glad to hear that he got that.
I'm wondering if the next guy, maybe Mr. Terry may know, if that was the man, the non-SF man that Abrams put in to
It could be. It could be because, like you say, some of that because Colonel App wasn't Special Forces either.
Oh,
but
wow.
We didn't care. You could tell somebody how somebody run or react and stuff like that. And he was if he wasn't Special Forces, he should have been, because that was just the way he ran. That was just how he was. It was the mission, but mainly the men. He didn't want to, like when Bill was killed, I was on bright light, and he could have set me in right then. But he said once he found out that from Sergeant Gross and those guys that he couldn't be alive, he waited till the next day to send us in. So that was just something like that. He was thinking more about, what's the best thing, not what just send them in for, find out what they can find out. But yeah, he was just the best. That's all I can say about him.
Wow. And Mr. Terry says Bushy Brows McGowan, he thinks is who replaced him, non-SF,
Okay.
after Colonel Lapp.
Okay. All right. That could very well be. And all I remember, because like I was telling you, he was doing all the spit and polish stuff that we weren't used to. When they blew up the inside of the compound, they blew up his hooch, and he burned up all his uniforms. So he didn't have anything clean to wear.
Wow. Lone Wolf X, did you carry any personal stuff while operating? I'm not sure if he means like any specialty weapons or gear, because definitely didn't carry dog tags or anything.
All I carried was a knife, an extra knife.
Extra knife. You happen to remember what kind of knife you carried?
Mine was a K-bar.
Okay, and another K-bar user. All right. Ooh, this is a very interesting one.
Oh, okay.
Roll of the 1-2.
The one is
1-1
this
was yes, sir.
assistant team leader, and usually the 1-1 was in the back of the formation by the tail gunner. The 2-2 was 1-2. Sorry, was the radio operator, and I done that. That was and yet besides carrying the radio, you had to have one extra battery, but you didn't have to carry any explosives or nothing like that because you already had too much weight. That's basically what those two positions were. And the tail gun, I mean, the 1-1 was basically to help the tail gunner with security. Because if that's something was going on, the 1-1 was probably the most boring job. Because the radio operator, when you're R1 or you're radioing in, you're right there with the team leader, and I don't know if they've talked to you about this before, but we had code books, and we had to every day it was a different code, so you had to transcribe that, and then if you had a message, you just in the clear, you say in the clear, and that whatever you were saying, that was what you were trying to say. So that was when you and the team leader were doing that. And then when you were the team leader, then you were doing that with your radio operator. But the 1-1 just basically was at the back for security. And Ed would call me up too if there was some situation where he wanted another opinion. He'd say, "Come on up," and we'd go up and we discuss what we're going to do, and then go back, or we do what we talked about.
Wow, man, they're another role or another indicator of why Mr. Ed was so good. Asking, and getting other opinions before he jumps the gun and does something he shouldn't.
Yeah, that's one thing. You can be as good as you want to be, but if you ask the right questions to the right people, you're going to find out more than you knew before. So, and I think that's basically what he was trying to do. He might, we might not agree and it might not work, but if you don't ask, you don't know. So, yeah, that was. Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
And that's really, how I couldn't think of a better person, like you said, to learn from, and eventually, for you to become a 1-0, who to, model your team after and take notes from. That's just amazing. And probably why you ended up getting a 1-0 role as quick as you did. And another instance, or another point to the radio operator, Mr. Ed would tell me, when the poop hit the fan, the radio operator is pretty much running everything on the ground. So I always admired you carrying the radio. You were running the show when everything got down and dirty. So that's another thing about the RTOs. They were running the show. Keeping in contact with.
Yeah, they're the link to the radio up to the link up with a Covey and everybody else. Yeah.
Total lifeline. Absolutely. What did your family, friends think you were doing at the time over there? What did they think when you finally learned what you were actually doing?
Really, they didn't think much one way or the other, I guess. When I got home there, I told them a little bit about Vietnam, and somebody told me they didn't want to hear anymore, so I didn't tell them anymore.
Wow,
and actually, my family, well, my dad actually was in the 82nd in World War II and jumped in Normandy, and he jumped in Holland also, and he knew exactly, because he's the one that told me before I went in the service, is war is not fun. You don't, yeah. And he said you got to be really careful and have luck.
Wow. That is yeah. And I've got a little note here, and I just remembered that your dad had made combat jumps with the 82nd, and that is just outstanding. And what a lineage. And your father, I'm sure, wasn't old enough, or was too old and had passed away by the time you were able to actually speak about. And I can only imagine what he would think about what you did in the war and some of your stuff. I know he would be proud.
Yeah,
Like,
and like I say, when I think about them guys jumping behind the lines in France in World War II and at night, and he's the wound up when he did tell me that there was only like when they only could find two other guys at night, and then they had to wait till the next morning. And then he was shot on, I think he said 6 days after Normandy, and then he went back to England, and then he went again and they jumped in Holland. But he was telling me how many when he went back to the bases in England after D-Day, how many bunks were empty. So he was pretty lucky that he got out with just what he did. So
oh man, oh man. Uh, any stories of explosives, for example, using any too much to C4 to hit a tree, blow up a tree?
well, we Ed and I there was a big tree that was at our training range where we had a rifle range, and Ed and I were going to blow it up. Well, we put a whole case of TNT underneath it and blew it up, and it didn't do anything because we didn't have it shaped to any direction. And of course, I was in Ed. I think Ed was commo, and I was weapons. Neither one of us were in explosives, but but the biggest thing we used C4 for was to heat our coffee.
Yes,
That
sir.
was
I forgot about that.
you just didn't want to stomp on it to put it out. But it really got hot.
Uh, Preferred weapon or loadout: M16, Car 15, RPD, AK.
Well, actually, when Sergeant Howard took me over to RT New York, I had a regular M16, and he made the team leader that didn't go out with Ed and them guys give me his car. So I had the car the whole time after that.
Oh wow,
I
that's
had a brand new AK-47, but when I that RPG that Ed used, we took that up to play coup, and we traded that brand new AK for that RPG.
oh okay. So I
And
was wondering where that came from.
and then
Wow.
when we got back to base, we were looking at it, and it's got the barrel's about that far out. We took it over and we cut off the barrel with a hacksaw,
Wow.
just in front of the gas port.
Wow. And were did you know wasn't New York? Well, I guess Joe Walker. I still don't know timeline. Y'all were pretty much the only two teams that were using RPDs at that time, weren't y'all?
At that time, I thought Ed was the only one I knew for sure was using it.
Okay, that's
And I could be wrong, but I don't remember anybody else having one.
okay. I thought that's what he told me, that he was first, or either this Walker may have been hurt or something, and at this time he was the only one running one. But I've always been curious about that, and
Yeah, I think
especially
I don't like I say I think he was probably over because I know we debated a little while if we wanted to cut it down, and
yes, sir.
we decided for the accuracy we really didn't need the longer barrel,
Mhm.
so that's when we whacked it off because it was easier to carry through the jungle
Mhm.
without that
And
barrel.
and I think if I can remember correctly, Ed said y'all actually ruined one of the mechanic's tools doing that because
We might have because the barrel's pretty hard.
absolutely, that's what he said. He didn't realize how much it was going to take, and by the time y'all left there, he thought they were going to have to replace that. uh, how many times were you exfilled under fire? How many times were you on ropes exfilling?
I just done rope once, ladders once,
Wow,
fire. I don't remember how many.
quite a few.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, so that one time on ropes was
Yeah.
the one time with Mr. John St. Martin.
Yes, yeah. And then when we hit the trucks, that was under with a ladder. Come out of a
Oh,
ladder.
okay. Wow, I
Yeah,
did not know y'all took ladders out on that one either. Wow. Okay.
we did. For some reason the chopper couldn't sit down, so they had to drop ladders. We had to climb up.
Okay. How often, if ever, were you shot out of LZs? Did you ever make any hot infills?
No,
No.
The only time we took fire coming in one time was when Ed and I switched. I come in on top of him. We took fire coming when they were going out, but I found out later it was one of Ed's men shooting out the door. Ed
okay.
Ed wasn't happy, neither was I, because I was headed in one direction, but when we started taking fire, I had to go way around. So
Oh, interesting. How many years in SF did you stay total?
2.
Two. And did you stay in for any length of time when you got back from Vietnam, or did you
Nope.
get out? You got out. That's what I thought I remembered.
I didn't do well with the discipline part.
I was about to say going from SOG to regular Army was probably not an easy transition.
It wouldn't have been good.
No. Wow. What was the average engagement distance in the firefights you guys were in?
20, 30 feet. Close.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Ed saying, yeah, and I remember now one of the reasons the guy got released or fired, if you will, for lack of a better term, when y'all went through that base camp, village, what have you, and y'all got back, and he was still scared or whatever, and didn't mention that he had seen tons of NVA hiding out. And so, I mean, they saw faces. I mean, they were close enough, muzzle blast, the whole 9 yards. They were very close.
Yeah, our tail gunner did the same thing. He could, no, not tail gunner, the M79 guy.
Wow.
He didn't tell us till we got back either.
Wow. Deepest you found yourself across the fence?
I think the farthest we went was like 20 miles. But I'm not positive because they never told us how far we were in. Because I don't know if they told you, but when they gave us a map, it was only 6 click square. We just had those 6 clicks. We didn't have any other part of the map.
Yeah, that and I've been told, I guess that's for in case y'all got captured or whatever. They didn't want the NVA knowing what all y'all knew or had planned or what have you.
Right.
But still, 20 miles. That's a ways out in the Indian country.
And like I said, I'm just guessing at that from the time we flew out till we got to the LZ. So
that sounds about right with what Ed has said before.
Oh, helicopter. This not be what they're looking for, but when my first mission, we were coming back on King Bees, and I don't know if anybody ever said anything about it. The King Bee pilots like to fly like they were fighter pilots. They come in on a formation and they split and all this kind. I was sitting in the door, and the King Bees come into the base and they flipped almost, well, probably 45 degrees on be on the right side. I thought I was going to fall out the door because I wasn't hanging on or anything, but the gravity hold was holding me in. But that was the worst one. And also when they first insert I went in on, it was on King Bees, and when we jumped out of the plane, I could see the plane wheel, and I could see, like, I thought it was the ground, but when I jumped out, it was like 15 feet down. I hit pretty hard.
Oh, I can only imagine the knee and ankle pain with that load going down that far.
Yeah, and I guess we all jumped there. So yeah, but those 2 things are that as far as that I didn't actually think, except for the strings. I didn't care for the strings. But
that King Bee ride can definitely memorable. Favorite air asset called napalm. Well, how often would you do you think you were calling airstrikes in during your tour?
It wouldn't be every mission. Like I did call it in on when, like, with Ed and John. I did call it in when we went look for Bill. I dropped napalm in on that. But that was a little funny story too, because the pilot that brought the napalm in, he asked me where I wanted it, and I told him where I wanted it. And he come around, and He got on the mic and he says, "Okay, it's crispy critter time," and he dropped his stuff right in front of us. Yeah.
Wow, that's that famous line. I've heard that from CCN to CCC to
Mm-hmm.
CCS. CRISPR critter time. Oh, this is an interesting as well.
Yes.
What kind of pistol did you carry?
Browning high power.
All right, all right. Did you carry that on in the field as well? Your high
No.
power? No.
Mm-mm.
Wow. Just curious on my side. Where did you get your high power?
I bought it from John Plaster.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, man, that's a piece of history we've never heard before. Wow. Okay. Uh, Very interesting question.
Mm-hmm. Person. Equipment. Sleeping bag.
And
No.
he alluded to not some guys saying nods, but he doesn't know about triple canopy how it would have helped, but that would have been nice.
What is a nod?
Night vision, you know.
Oh, I don't know. I suppose if I ever had a chance to use it, I might. But all we had was those starlight scopes, and I never carried one in Vietnam, but we used them in the States. But I don't know how good they would be for maybe I know that you see them all the time now, so I don't know.
That would be curious. Infantry.
It would have been
door
nice.
gunner.
It would have been nice to be able to go down to the Ho Chi Minh Trail and have those to see where you were going instead of at night. It's kind of hard to go quiet.
Stumbling through the jungle, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I'm not sure. Did the map have a Flays border on it? Like they moved the border on the map next to an AO? I'm not sure.
I don't know what that means.
Maybe he can retype it for us. I'm not sure. Maybe he means
false border? Maybe
false. There we go. Yeah.
No,
it was straight up. Look. Okay. Yeah.
just 6 squares.
Okay.
No border.
Good question, James. Very good question, though. What was the closest you came to the enemy without engaging in a fight?
10 feet.
Wow. And are y'all laying on a trail watching, or are y'all in the jungle hiding?
We were right on the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Man, oh man. Do you remember anybody who was usually flying Covey? Any memorable stories you can think of talking to Covey?
No. Just when we're at Tango 7, basically.
And there was John Platt. Did John sell his pistol because he was leaving? Was he still flying Covey at this time, or was he left by then?
No, he was still running Recon.
Oh wow!
But
Okay,
he was always buying and selling guns.
Yeah, he was a big gun man. Still is. How serious was the NVA counter recon threat? Were they respected? Definitely respected, but
They, we knew as soon as we hit the LZs we were going to be tracked, and usually, well, one time they put dogs on us. I remember that.
oh,
And I don't know if anybody else said anything, but they actually gave us CS powder, and I remember put that on the trail, and a little while later we could hear the dog just yelping because they got the CS gas in their nose. But yeah, like from whatever everybody I've heard and everything, they were always trying to find us, but they also were a little afraid of us, so they really didn't want to just jump in unless they had us where they knew we couldn't get away or we wouldn't be able to shoot our way out. So yeah,
wow.
I'm guessing they were probably, but not to brag, I don't think they were as good as we were.
Wow,
And I don't think they had the training we had either.
No, No, no. I mean, even their, quote unquote, the sappers and, some of these, some of them I've seen have been chained by the Chinese, but then not near, the stuff y'all were going
Right,
through
right.
at all. Huh. What was what most amazed you about being on patrol after all of the training?
How much little I knew, really. Hmm.
V- Very good. I'm sure that
And
blew your mind.
that's where the yards came in,
Mm,
and guys like Ed and John. Hmm.
absolutely, absolutely. They say there were two types of SF soldiers, country western and rock and roll. Where did you fall and who were your favorites?
I don't know. I guess it would be rock and roll,
There you go.
and there's of course Elvis is probably the best. Of course, I'm old too.
And who are your favorite SF men that you can think of other than Mr. Ed? Ed, Joe Walker, Bob Howard.
There's 1-1-1-1-0. Sorry, that was actually on that mission with us where we got the truck,
Mm,
and I can't think of his name, but he was really good. Real skinny guy. He was from Idaho.
that's gonna drive. Was it John Grant?
Nope. I know it, and
Ah,
I thought about it a while ago too, and I can't think of who it is now. He was really a good guy. Really good.
I'll end up finding out, guys, and I'll get back with Mr. John to verify and get that back to you. I should have the Operation Ashtray names in front of me. I hate I messed that up, guys. Um, do you think jungle expert training in Panama helped you in the jungles of Nam?
Uh, I think a little bit, but nothing because I was used to hunting and fishing up here in Michigan. The only thing is that the jungle down there was a lot denser and a lot wetter than it is up here. But basically, woods are woods. I do have when we were down in Panama. I told you, remember, I had the three guys that were artillery. They when we went on the FTX, I had to lead them through the jungle because they wanted to quit. So
That I've heard of the recently been speaking with some Force Recon gentlemen, and they went through some the jungle phase in Panama, led by the SF guys, and they said it definitely helped them out. But of
oh
course,
yeah.
they weren't crossing the fence and all that is on a regular basis. But
Well, they sent a lot of the Marines through there, which was nice. But they should have did that to more of the Army soldiers, but they didn't. But
absolutely, I absolutely agree about that. Uh, well, definitely. Any close calls like divine intervention at hand?
no.
I would probably say the closest would be the John St. Martin mission. Everything working out to get y'all out of there. That would probably be
Well, I guess for me too, the river would have been one too.
that too. That's a very scary one. God,
Mhm.
that's one of my biggest fears. I had a bad experience when I was a kid,
Mm.
almost drowning. How did you guys keep yourselves entertained across the fence when in downtime? I know being quiet was essential, but it's hard to imagine you guys didn't do anything during these times.
Actually we basically stayed quiet as best we could, and we would sit for half hour, 45 minutes, then we move. Yeah, you don't want to stay in one spot too long, especially during the daytime. At night it was different because at night you'd call in your RON, and then after you read your radio contact, then you would move 100 yards or so away from that location in case they were trying to pinpoint where you were at. So yeah, yeah. Basically, you're basically alert for how many days you're out there. I mean, it's just you kind of maybe doze, but that's about it.
Yeah,
And then hopefully
that's
nobody. Because I remember some of the teams they had where they had everybody stay on guard duty for 2 hours, and like, but John St. Martin, his thought was if everybody's if nobody's on guard, everybody's going to be alert. So, that's kind of the theory I did too. But some of the teams did have where you're on, 2 off, whatever. But, I just figured, like John did, if you were there, you kind of slept with one eye open.
That'd be, I was about to say, that'd be a very hard place to get any amount of rest. Like you said, that you might doze off, but sleep, that is not going to be happening in that situation.
No.
Do you know what happened to any of your indigenous soldiers after the war?
I do not. I know the American government played them a hard hand.
They did. That's we have heard a few instances of some of the guys actually getting their men here to North Carolina, I should say, but sadly, the overwhelming majority of them were either captured and put in re-education camps or were killed. Sadly, it was a terrible thing that the government pulled on them. Oh yeah. He's on the phone. Oh, there we go. That's a good one. I haven't actually seen asked.
Actually, we Simon and Garfunkel, John St. Martin had, a reel is?
Yes, sir. Oh, yes.
The reel, and he played that one reel every night. And you ever hear of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida?
Oh, yes, sir.
That was the last song on that every night.
I love that. That seems to be one of the more famous one amongst the Recon men. I was looking for Ashtray because guys at CCN, one of them wore it out to where I got told his copy got thrown out and went missing because he played it so much they had to take it away from him. I like that. That's a good question. Does it feel good today that SOG is known and being recognized for what it did, its sacrifices, and how it's contributed to today's special operations?
I think it makes all the guys over there that were over there feel better about it. Yeah. I mean, most of us knew that they weren't going to let everybody know about it really anytime soon. So that wasn't a big deal. I kind of feel sorry for the regular Army guys and Marines that got out that didn't get anything at all. In fact, just coming home. Well, we didn't either, but I mean, now at least they recognize that what we were doing. So, but
absolutely,
yeah, now we're all old.
That's why I'm glad y'all have agreed to come on here and share because there is as you can see there's a growing community that are very interested in you guys and y'all's experiences. Oh, Mr. Terry, did y'all have any experiences with any MiGs or Russian choppers?
No, I did. We did. I told her I wouldn't say this, so I'll just pass on that question.
Okay. I do know of one Recon team, Mr. Larry White's team. I think it was a composite, but it may be scheduled under RT Hawaii. They came across a Hind helicopter hidden up in the boonies. I can't remember Laos or Cambodia, but Larry White actually found a helicopter, which had to be mind-blowing to see that. Oh, wow. What is your opinion on the treasonous witch Jane Fonda? Doesn't have to answer if he doesn't want to. Just curious.
Well, I thought she should have been put in jail, but I don't know.
I'm right there with you. I can, and especially, it's one thing to visit and all that, but to actively turn men over to where they're going to get punished for passing you notes and stuff, that crosses a whole another line for me. And I definitely think she belonged in jail for at least some sort of time.
Oh yes, I believe, yeah, for sure on that question.
Hey, and viewers, the question was, do you believe our government abandoned POWs in Southeast Asia? And he says yes. And a lot of the SOG men would agree with that. And especially the SF men in Laos. That's for sure. Do you think our government has learned anything from Vietnam, or do you think we repeated a lot of mistakes in the Middle East?
I think we repeated all the mistakes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They tried with the hearts and minds and David Petraeus trying to get the populace, much like the SF did in Vietnam. But I don't even think they did as well as y'all did with the Afghans and the Iraqis and stuff. So I fully agree with you on that. I think they repeated the exact same mistakes in the Middle East. We'll see if any more come in, but until then, I had a question. What was it like for you going from running with Mr. Ed, learning from him and John, and then getting the nod or being asked to become a 1-0? What was that like in your experience, finally taking the reins of a team?
Well, like I say, I'd done both the 1-2 and the 1-1, and I was pretty sure that I could handle the team, and also when we did run, it was very small, only 5 of us, so it was easier to manage. So, you always anticipate some of that stuff that you're not sure you're going to be able to handle or not. But once you get in the bush, it's basically, you've been there. You want to do the best you can, and the big thing is you try not see. Our job wasn't to make contact. Our job was to get information. So I wasn't really looking for trouble, and that worked out great for us. And if it happened, it happened. But that wasn't our main mission. So.
And making contact would be Mr. Terry Cadenback's forte with the hatchet force, going in there and kicking some tail.
Yes.
And this is a great photo. We've got. Let me go back to where my clicker can highlight it. We've got we got Mr. John over here. We've got Dan Ster right here. Terrence Spoon. Oh, he's been cut off, but and that's actually Chief Kavanaugh right here, where my cursor is. Yep. And I can't tell who's next to you. It looks like another young gentleman, and then we've got Dan right there.
And that's Colonel Lapp right there, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Colonel Lapp and Colonel Kavanaugh right there.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, and that's making me wonder if this might be after ASHTRAY or something, since both of them are there.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know. I don't remember it at all, but I know that's me.
Yeah, and I think I've actually got another one of you. Yeah, I just found this one here recently of you being decorated. And I'm not sure who by, though. Sadly, it's cut it off. You can tell from the side that actually. Oh, I think that's Colonel Lapp.
It is. It's Colonel Lapp. Yep.
Yeah. I believe I think this might be after ASHTRAY. I think y'all are getting decorated. I'm not sure though.
I think that just for a little while before he left.
Yeah, that's a great photo of y'all, and I'm glad it wasn't in the task force days, and you still got to wear your green beret out there.
Oh yeah,
because those black baseball hats, I hate the guys had to go through that and wear the baseball caps. I almost forgot this, and I'll finish up the last little bits on questions. Can you tell the guys about you and Ed getting your earrings and a little bit about that?
Ed got, a flechette that comes out of when choppers used to salt the LZs.
Yes, sir.
They're little bitty needle things.
Mm-hmm.
Ed did that with his ear, and it got really infected. Mine's just a clip-on.
Okay. I was wondering. See you. You're a smart guy here. That's what it is, Mr. Ed picking up a dirty flechette round. That I'll have to rag him about that next time I talk to him. I'll have to bring that one up.
Okay.
And then this is a really good one. And I'll get to the last bit of questions, but I love showing these photos that not a lot of people get to see of y'all. Not sure what you're doing. You're going across the compound to handle some business. It looks like you got some paper in hand.
It looks like you got an envelope or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I enjoy showing those and letting some folks see them. But
I never saw
we'll
that
get.
one before either.
Oh wow! I'm glad I got to show you that. Then wow. I'll send that one to you when we get
Oh,
done
thanks.
today. By the way, we'll take a few more, and since we've had you coming up on a hour and 45 minutes here, how did you handle the immense level of stress on your shoulders while running recon?
You don't really notice it till you get back to the base. So, and then,
That shaking, like you said,
yeah,
come.
and that's just something when you come down, basically. Yeah.
Wow, that's a good a good point in there too, that you're really not letting the stress get to you until you get out to where you can, handle it or let it affect you. You know, do you feel we could have won the war if we had crossed the DMZ? He means shut down the DMZ, I guess, or well, actually go up into North Vietnam and into Cambodia and Laos to win.
We could have,
Mhm,
but we
mhm.
wouldn't have. I don't think the Arbans would have been able to hang on to it. We could have
I,
gave we could have gave it to them, but they'd probably gave it right back. So that's just my opinion, though.
Mhm. It would have taken no bombing halts and a whole different beginning. I won't get into it, but I think it should have been a mostly all SF war. I think had SF and air power been fully involved, I think it would have been a little bit different. Um, any advice for regular folk like us in combating stress?
Just don't try to take anything too serious.
That's a
It'll
good
get you
one.
every time.
That's a good one. Life's a breeze. Just dig it. Thank you so much for. I'll get into that. Yep. Before I let you go, is there anything else you would like to share with us? I'm sure we're gonna like to ask you back if you wouldn't mind joining us again. But would you like to share anything else before we go, sir?
No, not really. I appreciate you having me on, and I enjoyed it. I usually don't talk about it much, so it's kind of nice to talk to somebody that's interested in it. And like I say, when you get Ed back on, ask him about his ear.
That will be the first thing. I've already got that written down.
Okay.
We thank you a lot, and there are just a great number of thank yous coming in, and thank you, Mr. John. Yeah, you are all of y'all are heroes to us, and we thank you for taking time to speak about it. And especially on Memorial Day, it means a great deal. And like I said, if we can hopefully get you back in the near future, we'd love to have you back on.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And I'll be in touch with you later on, and you can just hit the little leave studio button at the bottom.
Okay, thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye. All right, guys. I thank y'all again. You guys really knocked it out of the park with the questions today. The questions were wonderful. Scott, I'm glad you got to join us and see your pops up there and hear about some of his operations and running. To be honest, I'd completely forgotten that your dad helped lead Mr. John back in to look for Bill. So I'm very glad you got to join us today. I'm glad all of y'all got to join us. Mr. Terry as well. I'm glad he got to join us on Memorial Day. And we're actually going to be having Terry back next month. We're many of y'all, as well as Terry, has floated the idea of having 2 Hatchet Force men on, and I'm currently working on that. So we will be having Terry back on. For those of y'all that have been asking to get Terry back, we will be having him back. But yeah, guys. Yeah, sadly, there were a lot of people rolling in there at the end. We hit it dropped to 19 just a second ago, but it was up at 33 or 35, I think, and it's hopped back up to 21 or so. But thank you, guys. Tomorrow we've got our first snakebite Okinawa vet who went to CCC and then down to CCS, both with Recon companies, RT California. He was the last 1-0 before Joe Walker took California. And he also went down south with RT TAC and ran Recon with Moose Monroe of Project Delta fame and of Mike Pillais of FANK and 7th Special Forces Group fame. So we've got another big day tomorrow. I hope you guys can join us. It's going to be Mr. Tony is a very, very funny guy and just an open book. So we had a great one today. This one, I'm glad we had a Memorial Day guest. I was hoping John would be able to join us because he's going to be going out of town for the next month or so. And I couldn't think of a better guest to have on. He's a wonderful man, as y'all got to see, and we'll definitely be having him back. He was one of the early ones, like Terry, who started speaking to me, and I've wanted to have him on for quite some time. So thank you guys. I hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your Memorial Day. Y'all be safe, and I'll be in touch with y'all in the morning to get y'all ready, because it'll be bright and early for the interview in the morning. Yes, I've got the James C. Donahue books. They are wonderful. I'm actually thinking about doing a book review later in next month. But I will see you guys in the morning. We've got a great show. Get your questions together. I will see y'all later.